The story follows a Korean radio host named Yoon Young-hwa, who works at SNC Radio on channel 87.9 FM. Every day, he talks with ordinary citizens about trending issues like police violence, inflation, and on this particular day, taxes. But during the live broadcast, a construction worker calling himself Park No-kyu suddenly phones in. Even though the topic is taxes, No-kyu starts complaining about rising electricity costs and blaming the government. His emotions quickly spiral out of control, so Young-hwa decides to cut the call before things get worse. Furious that his call was disconnected, No-kyu immediately calls back. But strangely, this time the radio crew cannot disconnect the line. Then No-kyu calmly reveals that he has planted a bomb on a bridge that is about to explode. At first, Young-hwa thinks the whole thing is just a prank. Since No-kyu keeps threatening to blow up the bridge, Young-hwa sarcastically tells him to go ahead and do it. And then, without warning, Mapo Bridge, located right near the SNC building, suddenly explodes.
전기세도 세금이다.
This is the Terror Live. The entire studio instantly falls into panic. After the line finally disconnects, Young-hwa quickly calls the number back, but it has already been deactivated. Instead of reporting everything to the police, Young-hwa sees this as a chance to rebuild his ruined career. It turns out he used to be one of SNC's most famous news anchors before getting demoted to a radio host because of a scandal. On top of that, he is also divorced from his wife Jisoo. Hoping to turn the situation into an opportunity, Young-hwa contacts SNC's news director Cha-kyung and tells him that a terrorist is responsible for the bombing. He demands that cameras be brought into the radio station so the story can be broadcast live, and in return, he wants his old position as a news anchor back. Feeling cornered, Cha-kyung agrees and immediately takes over the radio station for a live television broadcast. Young-hwa quickly cleans himself up, puts on a dress shirt and tie, shaves his beard, and even leaves a voice message for his ex-wife, Jisoo, who now works as an SNC reporter, hoping they can get back together now that his career is finally returning. Once the live broadcast begins, Young-hwa announces that the terrorist responsible for the Mapo Bridge bombing is currently on the line with them. Not long after that, No-kyu calls back and openly admits that he was the one behind the attack. Not long after that, the television news crews arrive at the station, and all of the radio staff are immediately kicked out. Cha-kyung barely reacts and simply watches it happen, caring more about his own career than the people who actually work there. Meanwhile, Jisoo recklessly heads to Mapo Bridge to report directly from the scene. Young-hwa worries about her safety, but he has no choice except to continue the broadcast. Before the live news officially begins, Young-hwa privately contacts No-kyu once again to prepare him for the interview. But No-kyu turns out to be far smarter than anyone expected. Before allowing his voice to be broadcast nationwide, he demands payment. He knows SNC is about to receive massive ratings from the terrorist coverage, far beyond every competing station. More viewers mean more advertisements, and that means huge profits for the network. No-kyu even threatens to contact another station if SNC refuses to pay him exactly 279,245 won. The oddly specific amount confuses everyone, but No-kyu does not care if the payment can be traced. According to him, if he gets caught too early, then SNC loses its profits too. With no other option, the station transfers the money, and the live broadcast finally begins. During the interview, No-kyu reveals that he personally helped build Mapo Bridge 30 years ago. Then, 2 years earlier, the bridge underwent repairs before an international summit in Korea. The workers were forced to work overtime to finish everything on schedule. But during construction, a terrible accident killed 3 workers. Instead of prioritizing the victims, the police and emergency teams focused more on protecting the upcoming conference. Ever since that incident, No-kyu became convinced that the government viewed ordinary workers as disposable people whose deaths meant nothing. That is why his only demand now is for the president himself to publicly apologize to the families of the 3 dead workers. Of course, a request like that is nearly impossible to fulfill. When Young-hwa fails to cooperate, No-kyu suddenly plays back an earlier recording of Young-hwa insulting him during their first phone call. And the worst part is that the entire thing is broadcast live across the country. Cornered and afraid the scandal will damage SNC's reputation, the station quickly replaces Young-hwa with another news anchor to continue the interview. But No-kyu coldly demands to speak with Young-hwa again. When nobody listens, he threatens to carry out another bombing and says he is about to give them a small warning. Seconds later, the microphone used by the replacement presenter suddenly explodes right in the studio.
되돌려. 빨리. 키라고.
네, 저는 지금 막
The entire station is horrified. Young Hua immediately calls No Q privately and angrily warns him to stop playing games. But then No Q reveals something that completely changes everything. He tells Young Hua that the earphone he is currently wearing contains a bomb. If Young Hua leaves his desk or tells anyone about it, the device will explode live on television for the entire country to see. No Q chose Young Hwa specifically because he used to be one of Korea's most trusted news anchors. For years, the public believed every word he said. And according to No Q, if someone like Young Hwa personally asked the president to apologize, then maybe the president will finally listen. Another explosion suddenly erupts on Mapo Bridge, dangerously close to Jisu's location. Even while Young Hwa is mentally falling apart, the news director forces the broadcast to continue as if nothing happened.
윤영아 씨, 카메라 들어왔어요.
네, 윤영아입니다.
Thankfully, Jisoo survives the blast, and Young Hwa feels a brief moment of relief. But that relief does not last long because No Q gives the government a new ultimatum. He demands that the president personally come to SNC within 10 minutes. Otherwise, more people, including government officials, will die. In exchange, No Q promises that he will surrender himself once the president publicly apologizes. The news director immediately contacts the presidential office, and while waiting for a response, Young Hwa asks No Q something important. He wonders why the terrorist only wants an apology when the families of the dead workers clearly need financial compensation too. That is when the truth finally comes out. The oddly specific amount of money that SNC transferred earlier was actually the exact compensation owed to the families of the 3 workers who died during the bridge repairs. Now that the money has been paid, the only thing No Q still wants is a sincere apology. Eventually, someone from the presidential office finally answers and promises they will try to handle the situation as best they can. Not long after that, Captain Young Min from the anti-terrorism unit arrives at the station. She tells Young Hwa to stay calm and avoid reacting emotionally to anything the terrorist says. Of course, she has no idea that Young Hwa is secretly wearing a bomb inside his earphone. Meanwhile, the live news shifts focus back to Mapo Bridge. Around a dozen civilians are trapped because both sides of the bridge have collapsed. One car is left hanging near the edge with a father and his 2 children still inside. As the vehicle slowly slips further down, the father manages to save his children with help from nearby civilians. But when he tries to save himself, he loses his grip and falls to his death.
네, 탈출.
예, 피해자 가족에 대해서 계속 방금 상대도 분명히 흔들렸을 거예요. 동정심 끌어내보죠.
Seeing this tragedy unfold in real time, Young Hwa desperately tries to appeal to No Q's humanity. 2 children have just lost their father because of the attacks, but the terrorist refuses to back down. With only 1 minute remaining before the deadline, a convoy of officials finally arrives at SNC. But instead of the president, the person who walks in is Tak Jin-chul, the Commissioner General of the Korean National Police. Jin-chul immediately takes control of the situation and demands that No Q surrender himself. But before he can even finish speaking, No Q angrily insults him and orders him to leave. Naturally, Jin-chul becomes furious. He promises that the police will soon locate and arrest the terrorist. He even reveals detailed records about No Q on live television, including a photograph identifying him as a 54-year-old man. Then Jin-chul makes a huge mistake. In front of the entire country, he declares that the government will never negotiate with terrorists or bow down to someone he considers trash. That statement instantly backfires. No Q begins exposing Jin-chul's past bribery scandals and continues humiliating him live on air. During the chaos, Young Hwa suddenly notices that Jin-chul is also wearing an earphone, and the moment he realizes it, panic takes over. Seconds later, the earphone explodes and Jin-chul collapses to the floor. The terror inside the station becomes even more intense. Youngmin notices a piece of paper from Young Hwa warning about the earphone bomb. But when she instinctively reaches toward his earphone, Young Hwa immediately slaps her hand away before the same thing can happen again. After calming himself down, Cha Kyung calls Young Hwa and tells him the broadcast must continue until No Q is captured. His main goal is simple. He wants SNC to become the #1 news station in the country. Since the president is obviously never going to appear and apologize, Cha Kyung wants Young Hwa to stop cooperating with the terrorist and tell the truth on live television. Once No Q reacts emotionally, the police can trace his location and arrest him. Cha Kyung does not care how many people die in the process. The only thing that matters to him is pushing SNC's ratings past 70%. According to him, if the ratings reach that number, he will finally become the station director. After that, he no longer cares what happens to anybody else. Meanwhile, Young Hwa is promised his old career back. In Cha Kyung's mind, it is the perfect win-win solution. Not long later, Jungmin arrives with new information from the anti-terrorism team. They have been tracing No Q's phone signal and managed to narrow 30,000 network circuits down to just 17. Even so, they still cannot determine his exact location. That is when Young Hwa suddenly notices something strange. Despite all the explosions, only 2 people have actually died so far, the father from the bridge and Commissioner Jin Chul. None of the civilians on the bridge were directly killed by the blasts themselves. Realizing this, Young Hwa immediately tells Jungmin to focus on the 17 nearby circuits around Mapo Bridge. He believes No Q must be hiding somewhere close enough to personally monitor the explosions as they happen. Soon after, the live broadcast resumes. But this time, Young Hwa has no intention of following Cha Kyung's orders. Instead, he lies to No Q and claims that the president has already arrived at the building and is ready to apologize. However, there is one condition. No Q must personally come to the studio to witness it himself. But right in the middle of the broadcast, another news station called KTN suddenly interrupts the coverage. Their anchor begins exposing Young Hwa's dirty past from his days as SNC's star news anchor. The entire country learns that Young Hwa once accepted massive bribes and even stole news reports from his own ex-wife, which eventually helped him win awards and build his reputation. They also reveal that Young Hwa never reported the terrorist threat to the authorities and instead continued the broadcast for his own selfish career ambitions. And behind all of it is Cha Kyung. Because Young Hwa refused to follow his instructions, Cha Kyung deliberately leaked every secret to the media as revenge. Ironically, the scandal and chaos only push SNC's ratings even higher, reaching 78%. Just like he promised, Cha Kyung no longer cares about the situation once he gets what he wants. He simply walks away from the station. To make things worse, he also reveals that Young Hwa will never become an SNC news anchor again. Meanwhile, the live broadcast returns to the bridge, where Jisoo is still trapped among the remaining civilians. Young Hwa only realizes this now, and panic immediately takes over him once again. Using only her phone camera, Jisoo continues reporting the situation live. At this point, 16 people are still stranded on the collapsing bridge. The biggest problem is that the structure keeps tilting faster and faster, and it has already reached a dangerous 15-degree angle. Desperate to save the civilians, Young Hwa begs No Q to let them go. If innocent people keep dying, then the president will never agree to apologize. Surprisingly, No Q agrees. Following Jisoo's request, he allows only the women and children to be evacuated first. But just as the rescue helicopter prepares to land, the bridge suddenly collapses completely. The disaster leaves Young Hwa devastated after learning that Jisoo has died in the collapse. For the first time, even No Q sounds shaken by what happened. He apologizes and insists that Jisoo's death was never part of his plan. Not long after that, Jungmin calls Young Hwa with major news. Thanks to Young Hwa's earlier deduction, the anti-terrorism team has finally located No Q's position, and special forces are immediately sent in to capture him. But before they can move in safely, No Q reveals that the entire building has already been rigged with explosives. Moments later, a massive explosion tears through the area, causing a nearby building to collapse directly onto the SNC headquarters. Inside the studio, Young Hwa desperately struggles to hold on to his desk, terrified that moving too much will trigger the bomb inside his earphone. During the chaos, a falling light fixture crashes onto his head and knocks him unconscious. When he finally wakes up, the president's secretary calls his phone with devastating news. Because his bribery scandal has now become public knowledge, Prosecutors are preparing to summon him for investigation. At the same time, the government believes No Q may have already died during the last explosion, and now they desperately need someone to blame before the public completely loses control. Hearing all of this, Young Hua falls even deeper into despair. His career, reputation, and personal life have all been completely destroyed. Then suddenly the phone rings again. It is No Q. He calmly reveals that there is still one final bomb capable of completely destroying both buildings, meaning everyone nearby, including Young Hua, could still die at any moment. Young Hua is given only 5 minutes to escape, but then No Q reveals something completely unexpected. The bomb hidden inside Young Hua's earphone was fake all along. Furious after realizing he had been psychologically tortured the entire time, Young Hua immediately rips the earphone off. Soon after, another news report begins exposing the terrorists' true identity. The real Park No Q was actually one of the workers who died during the bridge repair accident 2 years earlier. That means the person behind all of this has been fooling everyone from the very beginning. As the police continue investigating, every civilian is evacuated from both damaged buildings. The only person left inside SNC is Young Hua himself. While searching through the ruined station, Young Hua notices that the terrorist's phone signal is coming from a storage room somewhere inside the building. That is when he comes up with a risky plan. He restarts the live broadcast and announces that the terrorist is currently hiding inside SNC and that a final bomb still remains active. Naturally, the real terrorist panics and rushes toward the studio to stop the broadcast. But the entire thing is actually a pre-recorded trap created by Young Hua to lure him out. A violent struggle breaks out as Young Hua desperately tries to stop the terrorist from pressing the bomb trigger. During the fight, Young Hua finally discovers the truth about who the terrorist really is. The mastermind turns out to be Park Shin-woo, the 11-year-old son of Park No Q. Despite being just a child, Shin-woo is incredibly skilled at building machines and explosives. As the damaged buildings continue leaning and grinding against each other, both of them are dragged toward the collapsing edge. Somehow, Young Hua barely manages to survive. When he looks outside the broken window, he sees Shin-woo still hanging onto a cable high above the ground. Young Hua asks why he was chosen as the target behind all of this suffering, and the answer is painfully simple. Shin-woo explains that his father always trusted Young Hua because he watched his news broadcasts every day. To him, Young Hua was someone honest and reliable. That is why Shin-woo targeted him in the first place, hoping he could convince the president to finally apologize for what happened to the workers. Even after everything that has happened, Young Hua still tries to save the boy from falling to his death. But from a distance, the police finally spot Shin-woo hanging from the building. Without hesitation, 2 sniper bullets hit Shin-woo's body, killing him instantly and sending him falling into the darkness below. The only thing left behind is the bomb trigger still stuck in Young Hua's hand. When the police see Young Hua trying to help the terrorist instead of abandoning him, they immediately assume he is working together with the attacker. Officers begin firing at him from outside while special forces enter the building to hunt him down. Now completely broken, with no future ahead except prison or death, Young Hua finally loses all hope. And in one final act of desperation, he presses Shin-woo's bomb trigger. So the moral of the story is never tell an angry caller to just do it, because you might lose your job, your marriage, your reputation, and accidentally become Korea's unluckiest podcast host.